Cool, so I'm gonna start high level. I just want to learn a bit more about your organizations. Quick 30 seconds about what your companies are doing today. Maybe not so much Twitter, because I think everyone knows, but how you guys are pushing the boundaries of Twitter.
Yeah, I think it's really important, as we think about what's happening on Twitter.
Can you hear me now? I talk pretty loud, so I don't know how much I really hear this.
As we think about what's happening at Twitter now, we're really excited. We're actually launching our first brand campaign globally. So for a company that's been around for 10 years, just now are we starting to define what Twitter really is, right? And you hear a lot more about, the term "what's happening," right? So I don't care if you don't tweet, but you come to Twitter to find out what's happening in the world. And we'll talk a little bit more about data as we start to go on through the evening.
Great, so I'm Chad. At PostBeyond, we're building an enterprise communications and advocacy platform. So the core is helping employees activate their social networks. So we help bridge the gap between legacy systems and social channels, which we'll talk about tonight, to leverage employees and their activity on social to drive business results.
Cool, I'm Amar at Sales for Life. Who here's in B2B sales? Most of us, right? So we do something really simply. We help B2B sales reps make the number using social media platforms.
Great, thank you. So let's start off the night with kind of the big elephant in the room. Everyone's here for social selling. Social selling is a hot topic. It's been on everyone's kind of plate for the last couple of years. Is it overinflated? Has the hype died down? Do people still care about social selling, and is it used within your practices today? Start with you, Amar.
Does social selling matter? Absolutely. Should people be using it? Yes. How many of you have a LinkedIn profile? How many of you use LinkedIn actively to do business development? And are you successful? Yeah. So that's where the interesting data happens, right? So does social selling matter, Kenny? Yeah, and I'll tell you why. Because of the stats we've just observed here, primarily that we're selling the same way on social media that we are offline. And what we're not realizing is that sales people, and I hate to say this, guys, we have to start thinking of ourselves as mini marketers now. So as the world becomes more digital and social in nature, you have to understand that the way you communicate offline and online are different. The way you communicate on Twitter is going to be radically different than the way you communicate on LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn today, please get on it right away. Like pull out your phone and create your profile. And just realize that the purpose of social is to generate pipeline and revenue. So there are specific ways to achieve this, and yes, you should be using it. It's not overinflated at all.
So you talk about LinkedIn. How about, let's do that same example with Twitter, right? So how many people in the room are on Twitter? How many people in the room actually use Twitter as a tool to find and recruit customers, right? If everyone's hand isn't up by the end of the evening, I think you're missing a huge opportunity.
Totally agree. If you're wondering, because this is a question we get from our students worldwide, why should I use Twitter? I have guys in Japan asking me this, in France, in Brazil, and Israel, all over the place. It's very simple. If you choose not to use Twitter to communicate, hopefully you'll get there in the next 24, 36 months. But at least use it to do research on your industries that you're serving, the prospects that you're targeting, and the companies that they're in. So at the bare minimum, that's what you should be doing. Drake agrees, by the way.
So how are you incorporating within your team so that it's different than what salespeople have been doing in the past? Particularly, let's point that to Chad, because I know a lot of his team members are on Twitter, on LinkedIn, I see them pushing consistently. How have you brought that within your sales team today?
Yeah, so the big thing we try to do is kind of the core of our company. So when we start, the whole idea is how do you engage your team overall to be your marketing force as a company. So we definitely have that as our fabric. I think, just back to the first question, I think social is just normal now. It's 2017. I think about it as modern selling, not just social selling. I think the hype around the buzzword is coming down a bit. I think that the reality is it's just using these new digital and social mediums to really drive your sales motion. So depending on what you do and the complexity of it, there's those various touch points you really need to optimize. And social is a great way to do that. The digital presence that your team has, not just in sales, and how you integrate marketing and sales, and in our case, customer success as well, and the whole life cycle, is table stakes. If you don't think about those things in granular detail, you're not going to have the success you want. So I think about it that way. Our team has a lot of stuff that we can talk about tonight around sophisticated attribution modeling and using our own platform to leverage that. But the reality there is just thinking about your funnel. Where is social and digital fit into that, and make sure that your team is really using that correctly to hit their goals and have success.
So let's talk about that. Where does it fit in? Can you take that, Evan, or did you have something to add to that?
No, I was going to say we look at it from a few different lenses, right? As we help brands, right, primarily our clients, to think about how do they find their customers on Twitter, right? I'll just give you a great example, right? So this morning it's raining, your hair gets frizzy, and there's people tweeting about like, oh my God, it's a bad hair day, right? Just a regular tweet you put out. But a brand like Unilever or P&G who sells product to address that is listening for their customers on Twitter, right? No different than if you're an ice cream shop across the street, right? People tweeting about it's hot outside, right? As you think about, all these things that happen on Twitter, right? They're just data points, right? There's 500 million tweets a day. You're like, so what? Well, your customers are on there, right? Potential customers are on there. Your competitors are on there, right? So not only the question of like, what are you doing in the room on Twitter is, do you know what your competitors are doing on Twitter, right? And using the tools that you have to identify like, what are the right tweets we should be listening for, right? To really start to hone in on, great, there's 500 million tweets a day, who gives a fuck? It's like, yeah, but there's probably 12 that really matter to you. And it's like, how did you find those 12? And did you find those 12?
And Ivan, to that point, I see Evan in the corner there. Do you want to stand up, Evan? Sorry to point you out. So this is Evan. He's at Post Beyond. Brilliant social seller. If you don't know him, network with him after. So Evan has a story where he essentially, and to bring your example, Ivan, into real life, you're talking about brands, but Evan is a B2B seller, like the rest of us, right? He's listening to prospects online, and he found a person at a, can I say it, Evan? A bank, I guess, that you landed as a client, eventually, who had an interest in wine, and had a wine blog. When we know that info as salespeople, what should we do with it? Our instinctual reaction should be, let's engage with that person, right? That's what Evan did. That led to that initial phone call, that led to that initial meeting, and lo and behold, there was a deal on the other end. A deal is not guaranteed, but listening is mandatory. How many sales leaders are in the room, by the way? How many people manage a team here? If you think about where you are, the opportunity you have is massive. Because every sales leader, myself, Chad, I'm sure you, Ivan, you as well, the one thing we consistently tell our audience, the reps that kind of report to us, is simple. Know everything about your buyer, right? Know everything that they like, everything they dislike, where they're going on vacation, everything. Twitter is the most incredible platform to get that snappable data. If you're not using it today, and most of you have handles, which is fantastic, just start using it. Follow people, create private lists, right?
How do you track the ROI on your team spending time on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and actually just doing other selling activities? How do you attribute any ROI to the success of social media?
I can take that one first. One platform we use that people might be familiar with is called Outreach.io, and it's actually what it is really a sales development team-based platform. So it's the idea is sequences of activity. And so for us, what we've done, the first part of our process is very social. So as I mentioned, social listening component, Twitter lists, things like that. You're building out your profiles and taking an account-based approach. But the sequences within Outreach, our team uses to identify when they should be doing certain social activity. So we actually track those metrics as just any sales activity, similar to what you would with Salesforce. So I think a lot of people get confused around, oh, it's just social selling. It's actually just the right activity to be doing to engage and actually drive your process. And depending on how complex your process is, you need to think about it differently. But our argument is that you definitely want to start those conversations by listening, by finding something like Mark's point around Evan there. You want to find something like that and then measure that. And we use Outreach to actually, within our sequences, have social touches, be it a LinkedIn connection or tweeting, things like that, are actually fit right into there. And so we measure that in Salesforce like any other activity and can understand how that's influencing our deal velocity.
I think, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. You're a guest here. Go ahead. Appreciate that. Hashtag thank you. So I look at metrics in a few different ways. So from a rep perspective, I think most of us have a LinkedIn profile. Does everyone know their LinkedIn SSI score? Does anyone want to shout their LinkedIn SSI score out? 71.
93.
93. So if you, just a small divergence, if you have a LinkedIn SSI score over 70, you are in the top 2% of the entire global LinkedIn network of users. So congratulations, because that is a big milestone. So the LinkedIn SSI score basically is a score ranked out of 100, and it takes into account 4 dimensions or 4 areas. Building the right brand, sharing content, etc., etc. That is your daily guide as a rep to see how you're performing on social. Of course, pipeline and revenue matter, and I'll talk about that. But ultimately, you as a rep have to gauge, am I conducting the right sets of activities online? And the SSI score is a brilliant, easy way. If you don't have LinkedIn Sales Navigator, it's simple. You can get your score for free. It's linkedin.com/sales/SSI, Social Selling Index. From a company level, Kenny, it's really simple. Social is just sales and sales is just social. So you should be tracking every social activity within CRM. So you know how you guys go into your CRM, most of us use Salesforce, I'm guessing, right? When you go into Salesforce, for instance, and you kind of say, okay, I generated a lead or a contact or an account or an opportunity, you should be able to identify source as social if it comes from there. Now this is kind of 2012 thinking. It's really old school. What's the future is attribution. So every single activity, and this is to Chad's point, and he uses a program called Outreach for this, you should be able to track every single social activity you have in CRM. So I, as a VP of sales, again for the sales leaders in the room, should be able to see, okay, I closed GM Canada as a deal, ink is signed, how many touch points went against that account, what percentage of them were social in nature, how many were through phone, how many were through email. Yes, a lot of this requires you as reps to enter good, clean data into CRM, but ultimately, it's a really easy way to manage the metrics of this.
Just want to add one more thing to that. I think what we see a lot in our customer base is the multi-touch attribution discussion. So from a sales perspective, if you have a complex cycle, you're needing to understand how marketing and sales really intertwine, especially in today's world. So for us, you look at the individual. You have an individual salesperson that's running, say, a 12-month sales cycle in the enterprise. Throughout that process, there's going to be times where a person will come back to the website and actually download an asset, and you'll actually be able to gauge engagement, and that's, quote-unquote marketing that's tracking, say, Google Analytics and that attribution. What we've been working hard on looking at is really the individual influence of that activity and how that, translates to conditioning a deal. So, again, as a salesperson, being active, the digital presence, looking at those metrics, how important that is. So we spend a lot of time on LinkedIn profile. How does that online presence constantly work for you, especially for those that sell a more complex deal, right? If you're dealing with someone for 9 months in sales motion, they're constantly reading you, they're constantly trusting you. There's other stakeholders who actually are going to be looking at your profile and saying, is this guy or girl legit? Why should I engage with this company? So you need to be thinking about that as one piece, and then the attribution is the other part. So even, another stakeholder comes through the website and it's from your tweet, how do you tie that down to your GA or your whatever you're using on your website? And so we do a lot of work with sales and marketing teams and a lot of the growth teams and how that's blending today to really understand the individual's impact to the marketing metrics and ultimately the close business and revenue.
I think Chad, you nailed it. Like this is now the norm, right? I think if you go back 2 years ago, like very few, if any, people were actually tracking that, looking at that, right? And I think we live in a society, in a world now where we're able to do all these things, and there's far too many organizations and individuals that aren't leveraging the tools that are available around them, right? And I think just identifying and leaving this room at the end of the night to be like, yeah, I got to do moron here. That's the difference between the rock star AE and someone who just hits their numbers, right? And I go back to 5 years ago selling. I set up Google Alerts for my clients, so I got emails when things would happen. And 5 years ago, that was very forward thinking, right? To Google Alerts now is just table stakes, right? And I think as you think about social selling, it's just the norm now. Like if you're not doing it, you're missing an opportunity.
I'm going to challenge you for a little bit, Ivan. How many of you are using Google Alerts? Be super honest. It's not table stakes. This is the problem. You guys got to think outside of LinkedIn and Twitter. You got to explore all the digital tools that are available. The world's biggest brain, arguably, is not IBM Watson, it's Google. And there's a tool for free called Google Alerts, google.com/alerts. You don't even need a Gmail account to use it. You set up all your alerts on your customers, your prospects, etc., and it just drips information at you. If you think about how bloody powerful that is, as soon as someone takes action, you act. Do you think any one of your competitors is doing this? Do you know what they're doing? Hi, it's Amar. Can I get 15 minutes of your time? Social is so critical. I agree with Ivan and Chad, of course, but at the same time, on the other side of the coin, you guys have a massive runway advantage, right? As a salesperson, I'm interested in winning deals. That's it. Bottom line. If you're interested in winning deals, get on social. Don't wait. Don't wait. Just get on it. Make all the right moves. Talk to people online. Reach out to people. There's 3 of us here. There's other people in the room. Network. The information's out there.
And again, going back to being digital, not just social, I think the listing is a really interesting part, right? The social listing from an individual perspective, especially as a rep. But you think about just leveraging Google, right? A lot of people just forget, Googling something in, matching up what ex-CIO is wanting to do. There's reports out, 2017 CIO message. Here's, depending on what you sell. This is literally coming from the CIO or the CEO of a company you're looking to engage with. Match that to your value chain, right? Like, use that. It's quick, simple search on Google. That's still social selling, in my opinion. I think the reality is you gather that information and you're able to use it to provide context. Right? There's a lot of content out there, and I heard a really good quote the other day. It was, marketing's content, sales is context. That's why we all still have jobs, in sales. That's why people need us to support what they're trying to do. The complexity of business nowadays and in this realm it gets more complex by the day, and that's why they need people to really guide them through and challenge them, and they need sales, and that's just a huge part of how you manage that.
That's brilliant. How many of you have heard this stat? It was kind of first research study done by the CEB. 57% of the B2B buyer's journey is done online before they even reach out to a salesperson. Have you heard that stat? I mean, believe it, but at the same time, don't believe it. Because what I don't like about that stat is it dissuades us in sales from being proactive and from doing our jobs. And exactly to what Chad said, right? There's so much information out there. I mean, you Google a term like content marketing, or in Blue Cat's world, network security, you're going to get just shit tons of information. What are you going to do with all that as a prospect? You're going to need a voice to filter through that. That is the voice of the new salesperson. That's the role that we have to play. We almost have to play defense and keep certain pieces of crap out of our customers' hair and give them the good stuff. If you can do that, you basically win deals. One of my guys, Nabil, is here in the back, my colleague. Nabil does this every single day. If you're looking for ideas, talk to him. Literally, Nabil, how many people do you talk to every day that are just confused on what social selling is? Dozens.
Quite a lot.
Right?
Which is the beauty of it. It's just
And so we have an opportunity as sales professionals to engage that user and to remind them, well, don't take this path, take this one instead. And be genuine, be authentic, be yourself. This is what I'm talking about, where it wins deals.
So my brother-in-law went for a job interview just before the holidays. Went to a dealership, wanted to sell cars. I said, Anthony, how'd the interview go? He said it was about 3 minutes. I said, did you get the job or not? And he's like, no. I said, well, why? He said he asked him 3 questions. How many followers you have on Twitter? how many friends you have on Facebook and are using Snapchat. And he said no to all 3 and he walked out. So we laugh in this room, but that's the new way, right? That's the new norm, right?
Where do you draw the line between what marketing provides to sales and how much time sales can go out and do research, right? Because you can spend hours just going through Google, going through Twitter, going through LinkedIn, and right, all of a sudden you get distracted and you see cats. So how are you controlling the balance between
Finding these cats, dude.
they're all over the place? Someone's going to tweet a picture of a cat right now. But yeah, how are you measuring what reps are spending time on, but also making sure that sales and marketing are being cohesive in these strategies? Because more often than not, we've heard the stories about how they tend to fight more than they do work with each other. I'll hand that to Chad.
Yeah, well, that's the magic everyone's looking for, right? You need to really integrate those 2 teams if you're doing it properly. We like to think of it as an overall growth team, not just marketing and sales, and it's a lot harder in practice to do, but a lot of it comes down to systems design. I think, when you're thinking about your Salesforce stack and how you lay out your technology. Obviously, when you have in SaaS, for those that have, kind of the SDR to AE kind of flip model, that kind of does bridge it for you in a way, because that's almost a micro marketing sort of team that's hunting. But in general, if you have your systems laid out, hopefully, from marketing automation to your website and just how your content and everything works, you can get scoring in and actually make sure. We think about it in time. How do you spend your time, right? If you're on the sales side, ideally that's in front of customers. Ideally that's in an engaged sales conversation. We track quality sales conversations as a metric that we aim for. It's in various different forms, but you just need to really sit down and design the process end to end. So I think, depending on what you do for the SaaS folks in the room, you really need to think about how that integrates again with the customer success, the post-sale cycle, how that all comes into generating revenue. But from purely a social standpoint, again, I think it has to be part of your overall process. So, some people, it's asking people how they like to engage with you as well. I think, from being optimizing your process as a salesperson, if someone wants to engage over LinkedIn, if that's the medium, hitting on my LinkedIn inbox, you need to ask them that, right? Maybe that's the way they want. Maybe they don't want email. Usually it's more normal, but making sure those activities and who's doing what is important, right? And then having the technology and your stack to match up to that really is the starting point, or else it'll be a mess, because it'll all come together in various ways.
Good point. I think if I can just add 2 cents. So Chad speaks on how to effectively set up the stack. It's a super critical move, but there's also the other side, right, where sales is, where the rest of us are, right? So how do you know what your customer's reading? Can anyone answer that question? I'm being dead serious. This is not a rhetorical question. Please tell me. Yeah, Alex, tell me.
If you follow in LinkedIn's set of companies.
Yeah, too complicated.
No, you can see what they like. You
can, but the feed is so Alex said you can follow them in LinkedIn. Here's the problem. The feed is too fast moving. So how do you really guess what your customer's reading?
Top 10 books on Amazon.
Top 10 books on Amazon. That's a great place to start. How about you go into Google and type top architectural blogs 2017 or top network security blogs 2017. Believe me, if they're on a list somewhere, and by the way, you can go into Twitter and see the top accounts for network security, for instance, or architecture, or SaaS software, or cloud computing, or big data. It's a gold mine. Believe me, if it's in the top 10 of anything, a book list or what have you, your prospects care about it. They're reading it. It's that simple to get the conversation started. If I'm contacting a prospect like Frank here for the first time, and my objective is to open the door with Frank, I'm really not going to press the issue, but I am going to share insights with him. If I know Frank likes about, the Golden State Warriors, which you wouldn't, obviously, I hope not, then that's what I'm going to start a conversation about. Does that make sense? Yeah. Information is at your fingertips. It's how you choose to access it that matters. So that's how I think sales and marketing align and the lines of learning.
Simon's gonna kill me, but we haven't spoken about any other platforms besides Google, Twitter, and LinkedIn right now.
Why, I mentioned Snapchat.
Snapchat, yeah. What about the other elephant in the room? What about Facebook? Are people selling on Facebook? Are people researching on Facebook? Is Facebook even a good medium to be on? Or should it be that what everyone considers, personal space, personal side of their life?
Question from Sure.
Yeah,
I'll,
let's start with that.
yeah, that's
That's
the
the ideal person to start with.
I think why Mars brought up Twitter quite a bit is that, or exclusively Twitter, is that because the data is available and it's free and it's open to everyone,
Yeah.
right? Could you imagine Frank and I are gonna have a meeting and I'm like, hey Frank, can you be my friend on Facebook? He's like, who the fuck are you? Why do I want to be your friend? We go to high school, I can't remember, right? And I think, could you imagine doing that, then having the meeting on Monday with Frank? He's like, oh, you're like the fucking creepy guy that tried to be friends. There's a place for it, right? Does it directly tie into social selling? I'm sure there's an aspect of that as well, but what you've heard from Chad and Amar is that it all comes back to the data that's available, right? Why is Google a great platform? Because it's free and it's available. You don't have to ask anyone. You just do it, right? And I think, why Twitter's, that's why Twitter's a great vehicle, because of that open nature of the platform, to see just about anything that's out there versus some closed networks, right? So, bring up Snapchat, right? My daughters love the throwing up rainbow, but are they going to go in and find, a way to use it as a platform to sell, right? I'm sure that they'll, figure out some of the features and make it easier to follow people. But as we sit here today, right, on the 18th of January or 19th, right, like what tools do we have access to right now?
Do you have anything to comment?
Yeah, I was going to say, you can use the groups and still search within Facebook, I think, pretty effectively. I think there's ways, I totally agree with Ivan's point. It's much more of a closed platform, it's much more personal in nature, but you can still leverage those relationships. I think Facebook Messenger is interesting. We see that being from a messaging standpoint and chatbot stuff and just how that's expanding, being kind of interesting from a distribution standpoint. Yeah, I think Facebook has interesting groups, even for those in this room, there's, Startup North, and there's a bunch of different great ways that you can interact with people and leverage relationships, similar to what you would on LinkedIn, but I definitely don't see it as primary. It's definitely secondary from that sort of core social selling standpoint.
So I'm going to respectfully disagree with both Chad and Ivan, and I'll tell you why. So we do research every year at our firm to test the efficacy and the validity of every social platform out there, specifically for B2B sales. Okay, so just want to lay that out. I don't care about B2C. I really only care about B2B. That's our prime focus. So the research we've done shows for the first time that Facebook is beginning to make an impact. We actually have tested this across nearly 10,000 students of ours that use our curriculum and our training, and it's showing a very healthy conversion rate. So for the last 4 years, we've rejected Facebook, but for the first time in 2017, we are adding Facebook to our curriculum. So I think it's very early, and from a B2B sales perspective, you guys will see next year, there's going to be a trifecta, effectively. There's going to be a Twitter usage, there's going to be a LinkedIn usage, and Facebook, and you can't avoid any of them. All three have to be used. So I, who have very foolishly decided to go off Facebook for the last 2 years as I build my LinkedIn audience, I have to go back on Facebook. That's number one. Number two, I wrote a blog about this, so it's kind of public knowledge as well. We have a few inside friends at Facebook who have shown us very cool stuff where basically the data in Facebook becomes the common denominator. And when you log in, you'll be given an option to log into your personal feed or your professional feed. So Facebook is now recognizing that there are tremendous amounts of ad dollars at play. And the dates that I keep hearing internally, I make this sound sophisticated. I know the guy since grade 3. He's a buddy of mine, right? So he kind of tells me stuff. Maybe I shouldn't have him like that, but yeah, by 2019, 2020, we expect Facebook to really get into the B2B social selling space. it's going to happen.
I'm just gonna add Instagram quickly, being a Facebook fan. I think Instagram's more interesting than the Facebook platform for various reasons. It just gives so much more color to a person's life when you're trying to engage in, say, initial discussions. You know, a lot of people leave their Instagram open. It's sort of that, you know, that place where they share that visual side of their life, and you can just learn a lot about somebody just by a quick search on Instagram. And obviously with the new chat capabilities and things like that, you can, again, in this just standard social selling fashion, find something interesting, say something interesting, make a comment, and engage with them, and sort of take that offline into a social selling kind of funnel, if you will. So I think that's even more interesting.
Okay, sorry, Kenny, one last point, totally to your point, man. I actually engaged with the CEO of Sprint on his personal Instagram account. That would never happen. When is the CEO of Sprint ever going to pick up the phone and take my message, right? Or entertain a conversation with me? Well, we chatted. I thought that was pretty neat.
What if I don't want a Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, Google Alerts account?
And
Yeah,
LinkedIn?
just
And
quick,
LinkedIn.
yeah, don't sell.
Is that it? Is that it? If
Yeah,
you don't
just-
monitor those channels,
Yeah,
on a
this is not a
consistent
job for you. I mean,
basis- Is that where sales is going?
I think it is. Amar wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't.
I mean, listen, yeah, our entire bet, our entire firm is, it's betted and rested on the fact that this is the direction of the sales world, right? I'm really passionate about this, right? So I don't want to fly off the handle, but there's so much bullshit out there about these so-called gurus who say, well, social selling is applicable for some industries and not for others. Listen, I know guys selling boilers, cars, and desks that are using LinkedIn to generate leads. You cannot tell me in 2017, in this day and age, that there is no use for LinkedIn. I hear other common excuses. Well, Amar, my prospects aren't on LinkedIn. So is that the only prospect you have there? And sure, let's say the entire company that you're selling to is not on LinkedIn. Every single person in that company, forget that they're even a prospect. Does that mean you can't use Twitter to get information on that prospect, the company, the industry, so that when you do reach out by your phone, by your email, you sound way more contextual? That every single interaction is actually enriched with real insights, with stuff that matters to your prospects? Isn't that our job as salespeople? I think the problem is we've tried to automate everything, right? We basically just said, okay, I'm going to take this action and replicate it 50 times. And by the way, that was an awesome strategy pre-1995 or whenever the You've Got Mail days came. It doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work. Not to pick on Nabil again, but Nabil's success is because he personalizes every interaction. Nabil, you spend what, 5-10 minutes researching, right?
Yeah.
Every single kind of ICP or main prospect that we go after, because it's worth it. It's worth it. Lewis would not want to hear from me with the message, hey Lewis, it's Amar, I sell social selling training services. Do you want to meet at 2 on Tuesday or 4 on Thursday? That's bullshit. And that's what we're doing. My 2 cents.
I think there's one other thing that is going to really explode in 2017. I saw a lot of it at CES. Is AI and bots, and you don't have to be at your phone at your desk to be able to respond to someone and have the bot do all that for you. And I think this is as we work with large corporations, when I talk about, hey, I can reduce your call center volume by X, the average savings is X. Right now I'm talking about a meaningful conversation. Someone here is selling B2B, but if someone reaches out to you, you need to be able to respond quickly and right away, right? And I almost think of that, if you've ever had that email conversation that goes back, 13 emails back and forth, that was funny, I love it, it's great. If you're like, God, if I could have that interaction with all of my customers, right? The relationship that you build, right, over that 12 emails back and forth, to be able to think about how do you execute on a bot strategy to be able to respond back to people as they reach out. And I see you grinning because it's the future.
But that's not as personalized. That's not human.
It's speed.
So it's not human. I agree with you. But if the entire world is moving in that direction, it's okay.
yeah, in 3 years, we'll sit here again, and it'll be like, who's using bots? And maybe a third of the people might raise their hand.
Hopefully everyone's using Google Alerts by then.
And there's local companies here in Toronto that can help you do that stuff.
How are you using bots today? Or how do you intend on companies using bots in the future?
Yeah, I mean, from a Twitter side, you know, we're working with Rogers, who's one of our largest partners, where they're like, God, if you raise your hand if you wait in the queue to talk to Rogers or Bell, and you hate it and you're pissed off, right? If we can, you know, decrease the number of individuals that actually call the call center and take it onto Twitter, right? My bill is wrong. And what are they going to do? They're like, we're really sorry about that, but have you downloaded our app? Because all the billing and details are in our app, right? So as you start to think about, you know, 80% of all customer service inquiries happen on Twitter. And why is Air Canada interested? Right? Because you're going to be yelling on Twitter, why is my fucking flight delayed, or I can't find my luggage? And you want a response now, not in 3 minutes. You want a response now. So as you think about that interaction that happens, so much of it is speed to respond. Right? Just knowing that someone got my message, I'll respond in the next 3 minutes. KLM, on their Twitter timeline, actually has your wait time if you call in, and they update it in real time. So if you want to call on the phone, great, you're going to wait 6 minutes. Or just send us a DM. We can probably answer your question. I think there's a lot of use cases as you think about AI and bots across, you know, B2B, B2C, right? And what makes you stand out versus the other 120 people in this room.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think, you know, from a customer support service side, which is obviously so important to, again, certainly the recurring revenue businesses in here, you have people that are pissed off and churn and all that stuff. The response time, hugely important, right? How are you turning around? You see the explosion of guys like Intercom and Drift and others, like from a website standpoint, it's kind of almost going body, I'm sure it will soon enough, where, you know, you can ask, the chat box comes up, you know, you can ask that's going to go somewhere, it might go into Slack. Obviously Slack's an interesting discussion as well around it, where you can sort of drive that. You know, it might be someone looking to talk about a partnership, it might be a sales opportunity, it might be a support issue. They still all come to the website and trying to figure out what to do. You think, you know, in a smarter way about how AI and bots could help drive that, whether it's through Slack or otherwise, your main kind of videos, you have your support center, like how are you supporting people? You know, a company like us that supports global customers, you know, you're dealing with time zones, you're dealing with SLAs, you're doing things like that. So how do you think about automating some of that with your general responses to things, right? If there's something's down or there's some sort of main general issue, you can respond right away through a catalog of almost your support. I see some interesting trends there. It ties to the same kind of part, and it's really more on the customer success or the support side.
Yeah, I think at a B2B sales level, the opportunity is massive for bots and AI because you will be able to route your prospect, your potential buyer, in the right direction. I think the biggest challenge we have as salespeople is not enough face time. Would everyone agree? Don't you wish you could actually just spend more time talking to your prospect or in person with your prospect? Because we know that the more time we spend, the more relationship building will happen. I know the chatbot and other things in the AI world won't replace that 100%, but what it will allow us to do is constantly drip at that prospect. So you'll be able to just send information and messages at a proper time. I mean, this is a ways out into the future, and I think before it happens in the B2B world, it's going to happen at your level in the B2C brand space first. How it plays out there will influence overall how we handle it at our end.
Yeah, on the B2C side, and you mentioned off the top of ours, so we're working with Watson. So think of this, right? A bot that can answer any possible question you could ever have. So when I go to a brand, they're like, hey, we can do anything you want. And I throw out, oh yeah, by the way, we're working with Watson, we're going to integrate Watson into this. Their eyes light up, and their response to me is, I don't know what to do with this. It is just too powerful for us at the moment.
Just to finish quickly, I had a couple other AI points I think people would find interesting. I see a couple other trends that are from purely a sales standpoint. You have the scheduling of meetings. So for those that maybe tried X.AI or Amy, and you can CC an AI that basically books a meeting with the person. And quite interesting, so check that out. I was talking to some folks the other day, they're working on some really cool stuff around this topic as well, and It's more around the front end of your sales cycle. So for the folks that are hunting, which is pretty much everyone, I'm sure, hopefully, sourcing and creating personalized emails, as Amar mentioned, it's a lot of work. It's a tedious task to you're spending, to email an executive to really, gauge a response. You're needing to find source of information. You're needing to look through all these things we talked about. What these guys are working on is actually an ability for AI to scrape the web around that person from a whole bunch of open public sources and be able to pull the information together that would provide you with the right context in an email. And so, that's stuff that would take you obviously a tremendous amount of time. What they're working on is being able to plug in a person's name, prospect's email, and from there it goes to work and finds that context for you. And their idea is that it would even sort of put together a framework of an email, which I think would be obviously very interesting. You could iterate on it, but that would be, I know that would save a lot of folks time when you're trying to really go after targeted prospect.
Just a quick rant, every site I go to now is an intercom page coming up. I have to close it every single time. So we're going to need more of that. There's information overload, right? Every company's got a blog, there's tons of tools coming out, there's tons of new tools that are coming out of the new space with AI and ML. Where do companies that aren't doing social well today start? Where do they begin? Is it with the reps? Is it an internal strategy? How do you get this going?
I can take that. We find just by way of what we do, a lot of companies don't have a brand from a brand social standpoint, from a social standpoint. So they kind of look at it like, man, I'm like 5 years behind this. Like I need to start a Facebook page and spend millions of dollars to get likes. And some of these are big brands. So obviously the way we talk about it is taking it to the individual level and empowering your team. And allow your team, in today's world, to take that peer-to-peer conversation and drive that and just gain the metrics behind it. So a lot of the time, I think you can leverage, whether it's sales folks, we have a lot of interesting use cases around field operations. So you have big enterprise teams, seasoned sales reps that are out selling $1 million deals. Empower those people. Empower the user-generated content from them. So a lot of what we work on is stuff like that to really empower a social brand. So when they start to look at audience analytics, they're actually much bigger than they'd ever be from just driving through a brand channel that didn't exist. So when starting from scratch, you really can start 10 steps ahead by getting your team to be that force for you. Because all those networks are already built, the communities are there, and all you need to do is now leverage content. So really, the starting point we see, it all starts with content. You need to have good content, you need to invest there, it needs to be proprietary. But leveraging third-party content has been really relevant for people. There's a lot of great stuff out there, whether it's Harvard Business Review, other interesting topics that tie down to what you do. And then the third piece that we see missed a lot is the user-generated stuff. So I think everyone is kind of a spokesperson now. You have a lot of folks that are doing video and Snapchat stories, a lot of cool stuff happening in UGC. And as a brand, if you're doing it really well these days, you can harness that and actually suggest that information back to, say, your marketing team. And then they're able to utilize that in different ways. And we see really powerful stuff coming from that because you're able to really quickly catch up to something you can see as being insurmountable as a brand. So that's kind of some use cases we see.
We'll circle back to YouTube, but I just want to drill down on that.
Yeah.
How do you define success? Right, because you go online, you have a social brand, you spend money on Facebook, you spend money on Twitter, and it's easy to get likes, right? It's easy to buy likes. But how do you start to assign metrics to individual reps or know what success looks like for a company that doesn't necessarily have a social brand?
Yeah, so it all comes back to attribution again. So again, this is a big part of what we do. It sounds like I'm posting on a pitch, but the reality is, you need UTM codes for the individual rep, and you need to tie down content from your marketing team or whoever creates content in your organization. Ideally, it's crowdsourced from various areas of the company. You get it all in one place, and that's really what we do. And then from there, each individual has access to the platform. They can then share that content to wherever they want. And the key there is actually the UTM codes. So for those that know UTM and GA and Google Analytics, you want to be able to track back to the website and understand, wow, okay, we got 500 sales reps in the field, right? Here's the activity that they're driving out there from a social selling perspective. And then you're able to track that back to the website, just like you would any other source. So, you're looking at whether it's ad metrics or whatever you're trying to convert on, you can actually now look at, wow, here's what's coming from our 500 reps in the field. And this is what's converting on whatever it is. Maybe it's a demo or whatever your conversion paths are. But you can actually look at that data and you can see this is what our team conditioning the market is doing for us. And from a sales perspective, that's a huge missing hole for companies right now. You have enterprise guys that are out selling huge deals, but they're nowhere tied to the funnel, right? It doesn't come back. And throughout, as we said earlier, throughout each touch point in the life cycle, you need to understand that influenced the deal, right? So if it was, you're down into decision, you're scoping, and whatever you're doing in your process, to know that, okay, now the CMO looked at, a tweet or clicked through or whatever it was, and that actually attributed to the deal, you need to be able to tie down that stuff. Because it becomes really important how you continue to reformat your process and use these social channels to make that happen.
Chad, don't you think we're going to move to a team-based selling model in probably the next decade to two?
It's funny you say that because we just transitioned to that. I can talk about that because that's one of the topics tonight, but we just transitioned to a pod kind of model. So we see it, for examples in SaaS, I'm speaking purely from a subscription-based model, but we had our traditional SDR, AE, CSM model, which you'd see in many companies. That was kind of predictable revenue, Salesforce thing. I think what's really changing now, obviously with account-based stuff, especially, speaking from an enterprise standpoint, you need to kind of verticalize and get more specialized now. You see a lot more vertical SaaS, right? You got Viva, you got guys that are billion-dollar market caps, and they're just focused on one vertical. For us, we woke up after 3 years of selling, and we're in 15 verticals. And it's like, wow, that doesn't really scale from a marketing standpoint. So this year, our big effort in the last 2 months, and a lot of my team I see here, so we've been endlessly meeting and pulling this together, but the idea was really doubling down on our top 3 verticals, and then building teams around those verticals. And that's kind of a pod approach. So you have someone who leads the team, leads the pod, you have a hunter or an ADR or SDR for lack of a better term, that's charged with pipeline and pipe gen, and really you run your metrics around that and your workflow around that. So it's more of a team-based approach, and that we found already, I think there's a lot of buzz and excitement in our team because of the mentorship that brings. So you have various different skill sets in your sales team. For us, we're able to look at it and really be working together all the time on deals, and you can really set your metrics and your comp and all those types of things around this. So that's where we get going. To your point, Amar, I think the team-based approach and mixing, like we said tonight, marketing, sales, like these different activities into how you execute and how you keep customers and grow them. That's the nature of the game now, and the negative net churn and all the SaaS metrics you want to talk about. But everyone wants to land and expand, and you need to build your teams to be able to execute that.
Team revenue. That's the future.
Circle back to the first question, the initial question, Ivan. Companies that are using social today, or think they can improve on their social impact, what do you recommend, or where should they start?
Yeah, so you walk in and you talk to a client. You're like, hey, you got to be doing this. And they're like, yeah, we know. We don't know where to start. And then what is really important is that, and I did this with one of our clients where they had a couple hundred mobile mortgage brokers. And they're like, it's really hard to convince a few hundred people that they should be doing this, right? So what we did is we worked with 2 or 3 of the savvier brokers and used them as poster child to have them advocate internally, like actually use this and it worked. Because you can imagine someone who hasn't done this before is like, I got it, like I can sell, leave me alone. I got it, I'm good, right? When you have someone internally who advocates and says, no, it actually worked, and it wasn't that hard, is the key, right? Is have a few individuals, to share their experience with the rest of the team, right? And we do this internally every week in our meetings, right? Where we ask individuals to share back, right? As a manager, as I tell people you should be doing this, they're like, great, yeah, Ivan's talking shit again. Like, you get another thing to add to the list. But when you have one of their peers who says, no, it actually worked. It actually worked. They then start to listen, and it also gives an opportunity for some of the individuals to take a more leadership role amongst the team, right? So not only do you start to change the mindset around how do we do this, but you also empower a few individuals, right, to step up in their career internally. So that's how we use that in some of our clients. We sort of use that methodology, right? Because you can't tell someone who's been doing something for the last 50 years, this is how you have to do it, right? They've built their business a certain way, and now we're just helping them, with a few little tweaks.
So whatever they said, totally agree. Yeah, so to Ivan's point, crawl, walk, run at the individual level as well. So if you're doing social selling, don't know where to start, crawl, walk, run. Don't focus on the end result right away. Secondly, how many of you actually share content on LinkedIn and Twitter for that matter? Okay. How many of you, very important distinction, how many of you share at least once a day on LinkedIn and Twitter? about 5%, 10% of the room. So sharing content is the only thing that will make your stamp on the world today. I shouldn't say it's the only thing, but in the world of B2B sales, it's possibly the easiest way for you to make a mark. Not just in your company, but at your prospects and in the industry. People buy from brands. I know this name is no longer popular, but I'll use it nonetheless. If you lived in Chicago today, right? Just go with me here. If you lived in Chicago and you were looking for a doctor, and here's Dr. Smith, and here's Dr. Jones, but here's Dr. Oz, the famous guy from TV. Who are you likely to go to if all three are accepting new patients?
Dr. Oz.
Yeah, I think 7 out of 10 of you would probably pick the obvious choice. Why is that? Is Dr. Oz necessarily smarter? Is he? Yeah, I mean, it's a brand, right? And some people are calling him a crook, etc., and I get it. So you can use insert any, like Oliver the Jeweler. Why do people go to Oliver the Jeweler in the city? Like, who's this? Oh yeah, Yahoo. But he built a brand. All of you, and I'm going to say something, I hope all of you really take this to heart. Every single one of you have the ability to build a brand. Right here, right now. All the tools are at your disposal. We have never lived in a period of human civilization where you have this much power and flexibility and access to building your own personal brand. And there's tons of tools to do it. There's tons of tools to do it. So Kenny, to answer your question, where should people start? It should start at the individual. It should start at the individual. I need to see more brands being created out of all of your companies, because otherwise your prospects have choice. Let's call it the way it is. What, like, in all honesty, guys, okay? Let's get 100% real. Why did Kenny invite me to speak here today? What's so special about it, Mark?
Good looks.
I wish. But seriously, what's so special about me? Why isn't Eric sitting up here in my place talking about social selling and how he uses LinkedIn? Or Hassan? Why? I've taken the time to build a brand. That's it. I blog, I write, I get out there. It affords me the opportunity to speak to all of you. I see the screen. I'm not stupid. I see my name being flashed on the screen behind me. I see my pictures going online. This is, if you don't follow Gary Vaynerchuk, by the way, this is his formula. If you don't know that name, you should be following Gary Vaynerchuk online. So I say any company that needs to start has to start at that individual. And in all honesty, Kenny, most companies aren't even ready. If anyone knows Cisco, not the food company, the technology company, Cisco's outgoing CEO, John Chambers, he had probably 15 years of like literally growth quarter after quarter. He's never had a bad quarter in his life at Cisco. So he spoke in front of 25,000 people, his partner channel, in July of last year. You know what he said to his partner channel? He said, 40% of you will die in the next 10 years. And check this out, for your refusal to adopt digital in your ways. And that trickles down to us as people, right? As B2B sales, B2B marketers. So I urge all of you, get on it. Don't wait. You got to build a brand. You have to build a brand. It's really easy, actually. My 2 cents.
One last question before we jump into questions from the audience. I'm curious to hear a bit more about some of the tools that you advocate for, that you let you purchase for your reps, that are just some free tools that you'd recommend everyone use today, other than the obvious ones that we spoke about already. We'll start with Chad, because you've already mentioned a couple, and then we'll go to the others.
I think one I could mention was a couple. I mean, Paul and the guys at Nudger here, I know we've been working with them on different stuff. I think it's really cool around relationship science. We talk a lot about different ways that you can, access in other networks that your team has and kind of take LinkedIn to that next level. I think that's pretty interesting. I'm talking to the guys at Vidyard as well. So I know we had a meeting actually this morning with them around their Viewed product. So we've been thinking a lot about video and humanizing the process and how do we show the authenticity in our team. We really try and get that out there. I think video and audio is blowing up for a reason. People are sick of just reading articles or emails for that matter. So those are a couple I'd mention. You know, we use a lot of other stuff. I mentioned outreach, data flocks, lots of stuff from top to bottom on the funnel to try and optimize how we do. Purely social standpoint, you know, you just have your main stuff. You know, LinkedIn sales nav, things like that. But those are a couple if you guys want to check those out.
What about any individual reps, tools that individual reps are using? The Hootsuites of the world, different aggregators or consolidators that people are using to kind of do some just listening or just understand what's going on in social?
Yeah, well, that's kind of a main plug for us again. I think, you know, we use our own product. It's really meant for that. So all of our content ends up there. We suggest content. Our team's really active on that. So it all ends up in that place when you're kind of publishing or activating your brand, as Amar mentioned. That's the core of our focus. Our team needs to stand out, you know, for someone to be engaged. So that's really the main use case there. There's other Chrome extensions and cool things out there I think people can check out. You know, like I can think of a couple more after, but yeah, if anyone wants to come, tons of tools, teams here, there's probably a ton I'm forgetting, but we're playing with a bunch of different stuff to just constantly optimize how we're engaging and building better relationships.
So the obvious ones, right? Twitter, LinkedIn, 2017, you should be on Facebook, I believe. And then, you know, from a classic sales point of view, I'm a big fan of SalesLoft. So I use SalesLoft, our team does as well. Vidyard, absolutely. Video is the next big thing. I think every single marketer in the world has said that, and I believe it. It humanizes the connection and the bond pretty quickly. So imagine sending a video message that's 20 seconds to a prospect. It actually has a way higher conversion rate, and the data proves it over and over and over if you use video. I think those are the biggest ones. Yeah.
I'd say building on the video is cost you $200 and you're now doing 360 vision, right? Instead of just static, right? Video that the users are watching, right? Could you imagine you're pitching a client and you're somewhere, you know, you're at the auto show and you're pitching a client. Okay, I'm actually here at your booth. I think it's great, right? And the message you give back to that individual is customized, right, to that buyer that you're selling to. We use a lot of internal tools that are built for us, but heck, we don't even have to pay a penny, right? Like just go and set up some notifications on Twitter that every time your competitors tweet, you get a notification on your phone saying so-and-so just tweeted. And you know, what I do all the time, my wife gets mad at me because my phone's always buzzing. I have my clients, almost all of them on notifications. And all I do, quick favorite. And at the end of last year, one of my clients says, Ivan, wow, you really see all my stuff. I'm like, yeah, because I put fucking notifications on. But I'm like, yeah, your stuff is great, it's engaging. And so we're having a different conversation here based on what I've done on Twitter just by favoriting her tweet.
I've said it all the time, you guys need to build a B2B sales platform. The way Navigator exists for LinkedIn, there's a golden opportunity for Twitter to have something similar, to do exactly what you just described. I would love to work that. I'll pay you for it, Ivan.
All right, we'll chat.
Cool. So we'll jump into questions. I'll have Gord with the mic, run around. But yeah, okay, we'll leave the mic here to answer questions. But questions for panelists? Anyone? Start with the back.
Hi, my name's Cody, and I work for a sales and marketing team for hospitality software. So our team has integrated sales and marketing. In terms of social, what's the right mix of your posts, paid posts, content marketing, and posts from your team itself?
I guess that one's directed at me. Yeah, it's interesting. With our customers, we tend to talk about those three spectrums I mentioned. So you have your proprietary content that's owned by you, whether it's your website, various different sources. You have the third-party stuff, and then the user-generated. So a lot of those, you tend to not see much of the other two when you start. You don't have a lot of people like third-party content. Why would I share someone else's stuff? So we try and get down that barrier, and then the user stuff I think is really powerful. So you get your team, even blogging, getting them to write LinkedIn posts, help with their brand, as Amar mentioned, and spin that all up for everyone's distribution. that's a really good strategy. I think it's a pretty even mix, ideally, right? You want to drive stuff back to the website and ultimately have those landing pages and those conversion paths, but I would say, kind of equal across the three is what you want to look for. Ultimately, you want to think about when people land on the site or anywhere, how that's going to end up back to where you want them to go. So I think there's probably deeper stuff around that, but that's a good place to start. Trying to think of those in kind of equal thirds would be a good place to start, and try and activate that last one, because I think that one's one that we see missing a lot.
I don't think there's a science to this. I think Chad's point is extremely valid. We actually do this ourselves. But then there's models like Andrew Davis, very famous content marketer, right? Has the 4-1-1, which basically means that for every 6 pieces of content we share, 4 should be helpful third-party pieces that actually educate your user base. 1 should be something personal about you, like, hey, I like skiing and here's a blog on skiing or whatever. And 1 should be promotional or brand in nature. So there's a lot of different models. But I think the main theme is, if you read Content Inc. by Joe Paluzzi, he talks about this over and over. As you build an audience, the majority of content should be about someone else, not you.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, we tell brands all the time is, tweet out 3 to 5 times a day. The key isn't just to do it because I said to do it and you do it at 5 o'clock, but when we look at usage patterns on Twitter, the peak time for traffic and usage on Twitter is in the evening. So if you're going to tweet out, you hope to hell someone's going to see your organic tweet, is tweet out in the evening. Because what happens at 5 o'clock, we're done, we'll see you at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm done. Right? So how you take a step up is you're tweeting when people are actually on the platform. Right? And this is about free shit. You're not paying a penny. You're just out there, hope that someone sees this. So to have the best chance for someone to actually see your tweets and your content is tweet when people are actually on the platform.
Can I just say one thing, Kenny?
Sure.
How many of you, if you found out that all of your prospects were going to be at this event tonight, how many of you, well, you were here, but how many of your colleagues would be here? You'd all be here, right? If you knew every single prospect in the world is going to be here, you'd be here. Twitter, that's all I have to say. What I can say. Be on Twitter at the right time. They're all there. Engage, like, comment, tweet, share, everything.
Great. I think we have another question right here.
Yes, question number 3. How much time do you think we should spend per day on social media to really get the best out of it?
As what role? What role are you?
Well, I myself am a law student, but just generally for everyone else as well, maybe for me specifically.
I'll answer first. I don't know if there's a right answer. I'd start with you get what you invest, right? So I challenge you to say, okay, I'm sure you spend more than 1 hour doing absolutely nothing, right? And it's how much are you investing in yourself. So I challenge you to start with, like, take 1 hour a day, right? I take half an hour a day where I just stay sharp on my skills, right? Because I'm investing in myself, right? So I challenge you to start with 1 hour a day. So if that means 1 hour less video games, hey, what's going to get you the best return, right? Did I take it?
Video games, 1 hour.
But yeah, I'd say, like, start with an hour.
I would say 30 minutes. I think it's a good amount of time to start. Frequently in the B2B sales world, we are challenged consistently by VPs of sales. Well, I don't see value in social media, but if we're going to do this, I don't want my guys spending more than 20 minutes a day. And it's like saying, well, I don't see the value of cold calling, and yet your guys spend 4 hours a day on it. Right? So we still have to cross that chasm where it's accepted. But at the same time, I would say 30 minutes a day. And if you need a checklist or anything, there's tons available online.
Just like anything else, time is the biggest constraint, especially in sales. So you have to chunk up your time, just like you would any other kind of sequence of productivity, I think, right? You got to look at the right activities. I think what we've been saying overall tonight, you're augmenting your entire process to support more of your social, your digital presence in general. So you need to think about investing in that. There may be some more upfront work for those that are just starting to get that up and running, really think through your LinkedIn profile, think about how someone's going to actually interact with that and see value, kind of start there. And then from the publishing side of it, there's different ways you can do that to, use tools like Buffer, some other practical tools you could use to, from an individual standpoint, to schedule out content that's doing it for you. It's more of a, to Twitter is a good example where you maybe want some more tweets to get more visibility. But the key to any of this, is listening and learning, right? We talked about social listening earlier. The majority of your time you want to spend is actually searching Twitter, hashtags, following things that are in your industry, knowing what you're talking about, because when you do engage with somebody, you have that 5 minutes to engage them on a consultant level. They want you to talk, to teach them something right away. Give them something that they're like, wow, I didn't think about that. There's a spark to that conversation. We subscribe to the challenger model. That puts me on a lot of kind of this idea of sparking people and then confronting them with things. That's how you want to think about leveraging social. So how do you really confront the audience in a passive way, right? That's why Twitter is a beautiful thing. You can have amazing content out there that really gets people to think, and it's working for you while you're sleeping, right? So that's a huge advantage. So I think about how you can listen better. Twitter lists are huge. Get your prospects in there, get people you want to follow, and then ultimately be learning, aggressively around your space. Take that as the social selling first step. I think you want to spend time there because that's what's going to help you be better in any of these channels or in person.
We've got time for 2 more questions. Got one fellow in the second row.
Thank you. My name is Evan from Blue Cat. Hi, everyone. This is a question for all 3. So I think that in general, I'm the only person in my opinion. Here's a question. For social selling, it is still, it's not like it's not being used. It is still spam. People's LinkedIn inboxes are full of garbage messages. Maybe they aren't personalized, maybe they are, but they still are full. So that being said, if I were to give a list, I have hundreds of accounts I'm supposed to contact, over the quarter or whatever it is. Each account can have 10 to 12 contacts. And then should we prioritize the CIOs, the CMOs in LinkedIn and in social selling? Should we prioritize the lower level people that we could contact at a company? Could you speak to that? What do you think? Because if I have 12 people to contact at a company, I have to spend 5 minutes researching them and writing it. I'm only getting 1 account an hour. After I look at my lunch break, So I don't know. Just your thoughts.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it really depends on your model and your process and what your sales motion looks like, because we've had success with both. Bottom up, top down. There's a lot of arguments to both, right? I think ultimately it comes down to that research you mentioned and what's really going to spark that conversation. Is it something that's like, hey, I'm going to pitch you Blue Cat right away? Maybe not. Maybe it's something that's around the space, as I mentioned earlier. I think we're seeing a lot of focus on strategically with our team around that Google strategy I just mentioned, right? Like what's happening in that, maybe in the C-suite there. A lot of that's openly being talked about, whether it's being ghostwritten or not, but it's, here's the CIO or CEO space, here's our 2017 initiatives, digital transformation, et cetera, et cetera. How do you take what Blue Cat does and spark where it fits in that? That's your best bet, right? Like that's where you can get more personal with it. I think I agree with you 100%. I mean, that's unfortunately the world we in. Something starts to work, right? And mails maybe start working. It's just spam central and it's over, right? It's just like the best email subject lines. You almost need to Google that every quarter because the ones that are good get blown away in about 10 days, right? So I think you kind of need to always be on top of that, and that's kind of what we're saying. I think it needs to be omni-channel, right? It's that term maybe overused obviously from a retail standpoint, but the reality is you need to be thinking about these different ways and be creative about how you get in the door, be it top-down or bottom-up. We take typically a bottom-up approach. Someone that owns our programs is usually, not even at a director level or program manager level. Ultimately, our buyer is knowing who your user is and who your buyer is, right? And you need to engage both, and so thinking that through is the key.
I think Challenger Customer is the follow-up book to the Challenger Sale. I would really recommend you check it out. So a couple of quick points, and your question requires probably a 30-minute convo, so I'm just going to zip through here. First things first, the average number of buyers now responsible for making a decision in B2B sales is 7, right? It used to be 5, it was 3, I think 6, 7 years ago, so it keeps going up. Number 2, prioritize. You have a list of 100 accounts, 200 accounts, whatever it is on it, but you've got to know intrinsically where the money's going to be, and you've got to take some out, and then allow yourself time to research. Number 3, when you do research, make it all about them. Do something that I like to call social surrounding, right? A lot of people call it spying. I don't care if you do, that's fine. I call it social surrounding. Socially surround every single major prospect. And the last point I'll make, and why I brought up the challenger customer, is this. The days of senior and junior they're not gone, but they're quickly fading. We have accounts that are now customers where program managers were hardcore influencers in the decision-making process. You have to find yourself and surround what's called the mobilizer. If anyone doesn't know that term, just quickly Google it or buy the Challenger Customer, because I love the book. But Google mobilizer Challenger Customer, understand the mentality of that person, and then you'll have a much better idea of who to target.
We've got one lady in the back. Oh, great.
We'll take 2 more questions. That one.
Hi, and this might be a really simple question, but how much is too much when it comes to social selling, particularly with respect to B2C? I find, for example, with respect to a lot of email, a lot of online retailers, there's like an email every day to the customer telling them, what the latest sale is or what the latest products are on sale. And how do you sort of figure out the balance between sort of providing your customers with enough information to make a decision and just inundating them with excessive information? Thanks.
Yeah, it's another good question, and B2C is not as much my realm with that, but I think overall, customer experience, like what are you trying to create? Is it about just pitching people all the time? I think that's kind of what we're saying too. It's not. You need to think about kind of those different stages of where they are, and hopefully you have some systems in place to understand that a little bit better. So at what stage of your cycle are they at from a buying experience? And that should indicate what type of content they might be seeing or being sent, depending on the channel, right? So email tends to be the easier one to sort of lay that out from a strategy standpoint, because you can know within your email system that they've seen this much content or kind of where they might be in their education or what you do. But yeah, leverage technology. I think you want to look at a lot of those ways that you can see site visitors and understand these folks that are coming to your B2C is even more important with this because you have such a wide spectrum of people that might convert. But you want to really match your content marketing or your overall strategy to that funnel, and then based on who they are and where they are, you'll be able to prompt the right information and personalize it, which should obviously allow them to convert at a better rate.
I think also just to have to give value, right? Give me 50% off something 7 days in a row isn't value, right? So if you're giving back to a customer, like what is the value, right? And how are you able to segment, back to your point, like where were they, right? What were they doing on your site? How do you give them something of value back that relates to what they did versus, God, here's another 50% off from the store?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the easiest way to think about this, and for the majority of us who are in B2B sales, we have to take that same approach that Chad and Ivan are talking about. So you have to understand where your buyer is. And I look at the buyer's journey. Notice how I'm not using the term sales cycle, right? Because instead it's now the buyer's journey. It has 3 simple phases. It's why? Why should I give a blank? And by the way, from the data that we have, approximately 70% of the buyer's time in this research journey is spent just convincing them, why should I care? Like, why should I even care or listen to you that I have a problem? The second phase would be how. So, sure, I've agreed that I have a problem, Amar, but how do I solve it? And then the last is decision. Who do I go with? Who? So I would say that whether you're in B2B sales, you should know where your prospect is in the buyer's journey. And you can easily test them, guys. If you don't know, if you're doing cold outreach for the first time, you can drop a great piece of content in there and say, does this help you? And if it doesn't and they say, I actually know this, then you know they're past the why stage, for instance. It's the same as asking a qualifying question on the phone. You're just doing it with content instead.
Great. In the interest of time, there's questions. Our panelists will be here afterwards. Quick round of applause to our panelists.